Hello everyone and welcome to the first video tutorial that I've ever produced, and I'm going to be doing it on an article that was released on the MDSec blog today called Segmentation Vault Cloning Thick Client Access. I'm hoping to make this a more regular thing, so as I publish research, I'd like to do a quick video summarizing what the contents of the blog and any tools which are released, and why not start here? So I want to do this to engage with the red and blue team communities out there, to just kind of run through this information while it's fresh to me, and while the tools are fresh to me as well. So if you look at the article, it describes some of the research. So what happened was I was actually inspired by Buffalo Overflow's research on and his tool called Clonium. What Clonium does is it allows you to exfiltrate browser-based cookies from edge-based browsers and get them in place on your own operator's browser, so that you can leverage any access that might have. So for example, authenticate sessions to kind of various websites. So potentially like Office 365 services is the example that he used when he tweeted about that and released it. So in a particular red team engagement which I was on, I tried that, but there's loads of cookies. It's an awesome technique, but in my scenario, the cookies were not valid. However, I did notice there was some thick client applications signed in there on that target machine. So kind of that was interesting. I found that out by looking through seatbelt output. So I'd run seatbelt with the user profile on it, and it came back with a few bits and pieces. Usually in that output, admittedly in the past, I've only really looked for clear text credentials, and then kind of the hex strings there have kind of passed me by. But when I actually looked deeper, there was a few Office and Microsoft applications, a few others, which had these hex strings. I'm thinking, that looks interesting. It's obvious that the target machine's got things like OneDrive signed in, but how do I actually use this? So that's where this research was born. So if you actually delve into some of this, you'll get into kind of Windows Vault and some of the internals. I kind of explored the hex strings. I tried to import those directly from seatbelt without much joy in the scenarios which I was looking at. So what I ended up doing is looking a bit deeper into what it was doing under the hood, the structures which are being played with. So when you do see these hex strings, it's a representation of this credential blob, which in the structure which is in the Microsoft documentation. But there's also these attributes which are used quite frequently by applications. So I saw that used by Office in some scenarios, OneDrive certainly, and a few other applications like Adobe applications, Suite applications do use these attributes. And Microsoft describe it as a key value pair, and it's up to the application developer to decide what they're used for. But you can basically store nested binary blobs essentially in this credential structure. And if you look into the seatbelt code base, it doesn't go as far as exfiltrating that, outputting that information as well. It's a bit fiddly to do because these are all as you can see, they're all pointers to memory locations. You have to resolve them, and then you have to kind of exfiltrate them in a friendly way. And hence the first main tool was born, which is CloneVault, which allows you to do this. So without going much further into how it does this, you can get a little bit more information on the blog, but I want to kind of give a demonstration of that tool. I'm going to quickly give CloneVault a spin. So this is a fresh VM. You can see in front of you, you can see that OneDrive isn't signed in here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly shut down that OneDrive client so we don't interfere with it. And yeah, that's good. So if I've also, on the desktop got the tools which are released in the blog compiled. CloneVault, Registry Strikes Back, and I've also got a copy of Outflank Zipper which we'll use a little while as well. Just to give you the scenario, is I'm going to just quickly show you that there's no credentials currently present. So these are default Windows 10 credentials, I believe, in this build. Also, I just want to quickly show you the native Credential Manager as well, which will be representative of this. So if you click on Windows credentials and generic credentials, where they usually end up, you can see that it matches what CloneVault is saying. So to describe the scenario, I've got a beacon here on a target system. I'm signed into OneDrive on this target host, and we should be able to use the CloneVault client to kind of get to see if there's any more credentials there. So what I'm just going to quickly do is just copy this location locally and run it with execute assembly. Just fix up that path and run it on the target. So as you can see here, there's an extra credential here which corresponds to OneDrive, OneDrive Cache Credential Business. And what we can do using the CloneVault tool is we can export that credential in a JSON format for import on our attacker machine. So to do this, you literally just put the name of the credential, probably in quotes, and yeah, just give it a go. So once that runs, you can see that it's found the credential, it's found the nested attributes, and it's dumped everything out into a serialized JSON blob, which we can quickly just grab that from the window. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to save that into a text file and just make sure that it looks like it's correctly formed. Yeah, and I'm just going to quickly save that to the desktop. Okay, so once we've got that on our desktop, we'll go straight ahead, and because this is the main tool, we'll go straight ahead and import it. So if you actually run CloneVault, you can see that there's import via straight from the command line or from a file. So we're going to import that file, export.json, and as you can see, it's found the same attributes, it's worked its magic, and it should have imported it. If we now do a CloneVault list, you can see that that credential is present. And if we go to the native manager, you'll also see that that credential is now also present here. And it should be as close as probably possible that you can get this to the real thing. And certainly when we kind of step through this, hopefully it should work. But that's not all. So there's a few other pieces to the puzzle which are described in the article. So I'm just going to quickly run through the article and the other things that you need. So you actually need the registry key, and there's some settings there. I've not delved into the details of this, of like specifically what you need. But what I did do is I wrote a tool called Registry Strikes Back, which basically, as a low privileged user, should enable you to export a whole portion of the registry to a file or to the console via something like execute assembly. So if you use that binary, you should be able to quite easily get the OneDrive registry keys. The other things you need are, there's also settings under app data. Outflank's zipper tool is useful, so you can just grab all of the settings files and not really understand what's going on in them, and just put them in place on your operator VM. There's also finally, in the actual OneDrive folder, it actually kind of needs to be initialized. And when you kind of, in kind of like earlier days in this research, I kept hitting this scenario where OneDrive was kind of vaguely happy, but it kind of kept complaining that the OneDrive folder wasn't initializing and kind of bombing out. And it turns out that you need these this GUID file which can only be accessed when OneDrive is closed. So it is actually closed on the target machine. In the victim machine, I already killed that off. But if you see, do a process list and kill the PID associated with OneDrive, you should be able to grab these. So let's go ahead and do this on the target system and try and grab those files. So we've got that, and we've already imported the credential. Should have zipper CNA loaded. So this calls a reflective DLL from Outline, very nice tool. And we should be able to literally just zipper up the settings folder. That's kind of step one. So we've now got this zip archive of the settings. So let's just get that downloaded. I don't know why my cursor's not quite on that. Okay, so now let's download that file via beacon. And what we also want to do is we also want to go to the OneDrive location, and I just want to show you how that looks. So if you go to the OneDrive location, you'll notice that you've got this GUID file, which you do need, and I also grabbed desktop.ini in the end because I think it might change the look and feel of the OneDrive folder, but potentially that's not required. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cd to that folder, to the current working directory, and I'm going to grab the GUID file, which will download if OneDrive isn't running. So just a note, you do need to kill that off. I've already done that step. And I'm also, for good measure, going to download the desktop.ini. So we've got the settings file, we've got the GUID file for the OneDrive location, and so kind of the final step, this wakes up, is to use the registry strikes back tool to kind of get that portion of the registry, which we also need to do. So what you can do is you can literally just export HK current user software Microsoft OneDrive, and I'm going to write it to the same location, so program data OneDrive business, just for simplicity. Oh, sorry, I just need to fix the path to the desktop, which, as you can see, the tool is now located there. Should be, it's not very helpful, so let's just find the path. So it's just user desktop. So this tool, registry strike back, it actually uses the native .NET methods to kind of access the registry and recurse it. And there was actually already a PowerShell script which actually got this into a registry format, which is pretty impressive. And I kind of like worked with that to make a C# port of it. So that's what that tool does. It can take a little bit of time depending on what you're actually trying to dump with it. This should be fairly quick, but just for good measure, I'm just going to check that the job is actually finished before I download that. So as you can see, it's actually still going. It's done now. Okay, so I'm going to quickly download that registry file. Okay, so in downloads, we should have the settings zip, the GUID file, the desktop.ini for good measure, and we should now have a registry.reg formatted representation of the OneDrive key. So actually, I'm not going to sync it all. I'm just going to sync these two for now so that we can kind of prepare our operator VM. Okay, so let's get back to the desktop. So in here, we should have as you can see, we should be able to see that we've got the updated local Microsoft OneDrive settings. So I'm going to copy from that point. I'm going to find the equivalent path on my machine. So it's going to be the same path. We need to put this into place, but the user, our user on this system is actually just called user, rather than this instance, Dade Murphy. So in the settings file, again, I didn't put much effort into kind of understanding what's going on with the settings. Rather, I just kind of like did the minimum to get this fully functional for the purposes of accessing the OneDrive. I'm just going to overwrite everything there so it's cloned with our system. Okay, so that's in place from the zip file here. The other thing we want to do is we want to import that registry key, and this should be a valid registry format, and I've added that to the registry. Okay. Now the final piece of the puzzle is to kind of prepare your OneDrive folder. So as you know, as I mentioned, I think that when you load OneDrive with the credential, the settings and stuff, it doesn't function unless you've got an initialized OneDrive folder, and what it looks for is probably this file. So what I want to do is I kind of want to make this folder. So what what I found was the easiest thing to do, rather than changing some of the settings, which I did look into briefly, is just to quickly just make the exact same path. We've got admin on our own operator host, so we can do what we want. The only thing you need to be conscious of is you need to change the permissions so that your lower privileged user on your host can access this. But other than that, I didn't really see any issue with doing it this way. So I've now kind of cloned what should be equivalent to the target. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sync straight from Cobalt Strike these two files, the GUID file and the desktop.ini, which should make a OneDrive folder. So you can see this is the fake folder. I'm just going to sync them there, and hopefully it should go into place. Perhaps if I need to see hidden files, they might still be hidden, you know. I'm thinking the best way to actually show them on the target, maybe if I go to it and do a DAR, I just want to make sure that they're actually there. Just quickly try PowerShell. I hadn't actually thought of this, how I've kind of verified they're there in this demo. So let's just quickly see if this works. Just going to cd to that directory and see, did that actually do anything? No, there's nothing there. It's an interesting one because these files are kind of like a bit subtle. So you can see that one's there. The desktop.ini one, okay, so that might be it. Okay, so Cobalt Strike didn't have permissions. So what we should do first is what I was describing is we need to figure out, we need to add all users to full control over this folder. Maybe that is the missing piece here. So let's just try and sync that again for good measure. Okay, so it's download complete now. And yeah, okay, so those files are there. So yeah, make sure that your current user can access the fake OneDrive folder which you create. Okay, so let me just quickly run through a summary just to make sure before we hit go, because it can kind of like does have a tendency to bum out if everything's not right. So we exported the credential using Clone Vault. We zipped up the settings and put that into place. We then also listed the OneDrive folder the initialization file, and we recreated that and changed the permissions on our host. We also did the registry strokes back to kind of get the OneDrive registry key out and import it into our operating machine. So I think that we have, as you can see, it can be a little, it's quite a fiddly process, but hopefully if we run OneDrive now, let's see what it does. So it's thinking about it. You can see that it's registered that it's now part of that organization, and it looks pretty happy. So it's syncing. Okay, and it's found the files in OneDrive. Good, it's looking good. And interestingly, you'll also notice that it kind of automatically handles, it's automatically built into Explorer as well. So as you can see, I've got a few files here. Let's open. Okay. Cool. So yeah, there we have it. It's successfully downloaded a file from OneDrive, and we successfully cloned the access from the lab environment there. Okay, cool. So I think that can kind of conclude the video run through today. Check out the blog. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Nowadays I'm hanging out on the Red Team Sec channel, so I suggest you kind of reach out to me there. And if you want the tools, they're at the bottom of the. There's links at the bottom of the blog entry. You have to compile them yourself. Get them from the ActiveBreach, MDSec ActiveBreach GitHub, and compile them up, and you should be fine. In terms of detection and prevention, there's a few bullet points here. I realize that this isn't, there's probably more research which needs to be done in this space, but the key things which I noticed are things like this Vault Credentials Were Read event appears a lot when you kind of do steps through this. Equally, if you're running something like CPEL, it will also flag these events, so these are certainly worth looking for. There are also policies which you can apply to OneDrive, as things like conditional access policies, which should limit the access. You'll also notice, one thing I did notice when stepping through this research is that if you actually go to the OneDrive settings after having done this, you can see that you've got a OneDrive device ID. So presumably these, if you've got audit policies applied, you'll be able to see these being coming into your tenant potentially as well. So yeah, further look into those things in terms of detection and defense against this. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video today. And as I say, I'm hoping to try and make this a more regular thing, and we can work through some of this research. So yeah, shout out to everyone at MDSec, and also Richard Warren for the initial inspiration with the cloning tool. Thank you very much. Cheers.